welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining us. To start, perhaps I can go through a small, very quick round of introductions, and then Talcandro, our Senior Program Officer at the Secretariat, will give some opening remarks, and then we can start the presentation on this small grants project with the thematic of improving ABS information management systems and standard operating procedures. So just to start, my name is Matthew Diaz. I'm a program officer here at the Secretariat in the ABS unit. I work on the ABS Clearinghouse, among other things, and I'm joined with four other colleagues. I'll pass it over to Gisela, and then Beatrice, and then Farah, and then maybe we can end with Tauco.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Gisela Talamas, and I am part of the ABS team. And most specifically, I work with the ABS Clearinghouse. We're going to be here monitoring the chat, so feel free to ask your questions, and we'll be typing your answers. Bea.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Beatriz Gomez Castro. I'm also working with the team on ABS and the Naviga protocol, particularly on national reports and assessment and review. And yeah, I think we have probably met in different, in some of these other webinars and meetings. Farah, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nusrat Vara. I'm working as a program management assistant at the ABS unit, and it's good to see you all here.
Good morning and good afternoon to everybody out there. My name is Tauco Congo, and I'm the head of the ABS unit. Over to you, Matt.
Sure. Let me start the presentation, but before that, Tauco, do you want to provide a few opening remarks?
All right, let me go ahead.
Okay.
Once again, welcome to all of you, to add my voice to that of Matt. And this is the first in a series of webinars that we will be undertaking this week on a number of topics. And what brought us here is that in COP MOP 1, there was a decision on what will be seen as the priorities for capacity building development. And these, of course, were in the context of ratifying the protocol and then implementing the protocol, dealing with mutually agreed terms, value addition, etc. And then we saw the review of implementation of the protocol in around 2018 and 2019. And then we also saw the emergence of the ABS global workshops where providers and users could meet and just look at this business of doing ABS. And in COP5, we saw the adoption and of the revised capacity building development action plan for the Nagoya Protocol. In that decision, the parties have requested Secretariat to continue to facilitate capacity development, building and development, as well as to support the effective implementation of the protocol, and at the same time also to support the opportunities for compiling and sharing lessons learned and good practices, and then make them available through the clearinghouse. Now, in doing all of this, of course, there is a need for partners, and we are grateful that we have the general support from the government of Denmark and the government of Japan through the Japan Biodiversity Fund. And so today we are launching the ABS Small Grants project, and this is within the context of our capacity building development program with two objectives: to support the operationalization of legal frameworks and systems for ABS, and as well as to, through that, share lessons and best practices. While we're doing this, throughout the years and based on previously identified needs by parties and relevant stakeholders, we aim to support the practical efforts to advance the achievements of Goal C and Target 13 of the Economy Montreal Global Borders Framework. And through these small grants that we hope can translate the protocol into effective and efficient actions that can make ABS and the objectives of the protocol a reality on the ground out there. And the program has been introduced to you through a notification, and it consists in essence of 3 focal areas, which Matt will take you through one of them just now. And these areas are to improve ABS information systems and standard operation procedures, which is the topic of today. And then later on in the week, we are going to look at communicating user-friendly ABS procedures, and that will be done in partnership with the Nagoya Protocol Hub. And then finally, we look at developing and implementing community protocols and improving access to traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources and benefit sharing. And the question that we're trying to answer here is, what do you need to know so that you can participate in these small grants? And so for that, we've got this series of webinars, and we have today, and then tomorrow morning we'll have the one on communicating ABS friendly ABS procedures, and on Wednesday we will have the ones on developing and implementing community protocols. And so my colleagues are here, and they will be taking you through the various topics. And today we have Matt to take us through the improving ABS information systems and standard operating procedure. Over to you, Matt, and welcome to you all once again, and may we have fruitful deliberations.
Thank you, Telco. So I hope everyone can see my screen, right? Good. Okay, so yeah, as Telco said, we're talking about the Small Grants Project, and it's a very exciting thing for us because we've never done something like this before at the Secretariat to provide these small grants for different thematics. So I'm very happy that we sent out that notification at the end of March. I hope you've all read it, and today we're going to talk about one of the thematic areas that Telco introduced and we've been working on, which is improving ABS information systems and standard operating procedures. So our agenda for this webinar hopefully will be about 1 hour. We'll leave a lot of time at the end for questions. So as Gisela mentioned, please type in your questions to the chat and we'll get to them at the end. I'll talk a little bit about our capacity building and development program that we've been working on at the Secretariat. Then I'll talk a little bit more how we focused in 2024 with this global workshop in Bonn, Germany. And then we have this small grants project, which I'll provide a few more details on. And then I'll talk about information management systems and standard operating procedures. And then we'll move to the question and answer. So this is just to give you Telco mentioned a little bit about the history of some of the capacity building we've been doing at the Secretariat and our program. When the protocol entered into force in 2014, we focused on regional workshops and developing e-learning modules that were more focused on helping countries prepare and get ready and set up the preconditions necessary to do ABS, ratifying the protocol, raising awareness, understanding the obligations and the articles of the protocol, understanding how to revise or establish the access and benefit and compliance measures that are required by the protocol, setting up the institutional arrangements and populating the ABS clearinghouse. So that's what we were focusing on. And as time has gone on, we've shifted more to focus more on the operationalization and implementation of the frameworks the national frameworks developed by parties and others. And in 2018, as Telco mentioned, we had the assessment and review, and we had a first global workshop that was there to share experiences on how countries are actually translating those national measures into action to implement ABS and do ABS in practice. We had COP15, and then we had our second global workshop. I think many of you who are here now or might have been at that workshop. I recognize some names on the attendees here. There we had another workshop where we tried to really focus on the doing aspect and very practical actions on ABS and what countries can do to translate those articles of the protocol into action. So the doing ABS actions were more about specific practical things like addressing requests for access, managing applications for access, negotiating MAT and granting permits, prior informed consent and mutually agreed terms, publishing that information on the clearinghouse, monitoring MAT, monitoring utilization, gathering information from checkpoints, from users, and publishing those as checkpoint communiques on the clearinghouse, addressing issues and questions related to non-compliance, and then tracking benefits. So we're focusing on these actions now and helping countries to undertake this type of work. These actions, the doing ABS actions, are nothing new. They're also coming out of they're very related to the revised capacity building action plan that came out of COP 5. And those were, there we had 6 outcome areas and a whole bunch of related indicative activities that countries could think about and to strengthen implementation. So I encourage you to also take a look at those outcome areas and indicative activities, which are very related to these actions that we're going to talk about. So our capacity building program and our focus on doing ABS, as also Telco mentions, we want to promote practical, efficient, effective actions to implement the Nagoya Protocol and achieve Goal C and Target 13 of the KM GBF. So that's our overall objective. We want to support countries to implement and operationalize the ABS measures and institutional arrangements that they have established. So that's what we're trying to do as well, is to support them to make the best use and implement these ABS measures. So how we're trying to do that is through our ABS global workshop that we had in 2024. We sort of that was a venue to share experience and lesson learned and encourage action and cooperation and sort of demonstrate how these actions are being, well, the protocol is being translated into action. And what we also, to follow up on that work, we wanted to provide small grants to support countries to improve how they are doing ABS. So this was the workshop that we had in 2024 in Bonn. Thanks to the Japan Fund, thanks to the government of Germany, the government of Denmark, and the ABS Capacity Development Initiative. So it was a very nice chance to get to meet in person and talk about these issues. And I think what we learned was those kind of experiences and in-person interactions were very useful. We focused on the doing aspect of ABS, so a practical view on how the legal frameworks are being translated into action. We shared that experience, and we identified some key focus areas that had a high return on investment. So user-friendly ABS procedures was one of the topics, community protocols and associated traditional knowledge, as well as ABS information systems and internal operating procedures. So those were the sort of the things that we thought are areas we could focus on to have a high return on investment. We also, following that workshop in 2024, we also had a workshop at COP16, and this was all about, again, the idea of information sharing, about how the clearinghouse fits in and how information and information sharing and managing that information is a key part of implementing the protocol. So that also led us into this call for project concepts, which was announced through a notification late last month. So we're very excited about this project. And I invite you to review that notification on the. You can find it on the ABS CBD website, and look at the ABS section on the CBD website where we have our small grants project. We have some information there, and you can access all the application forms and related information for the webinars. So as Tauco mentioned as well, we have webinars coming up. Today we're focusing on ABS information systems and standard operating procedures. April 9th, we have at 10 a.m., we have communicating user-friendly procedures with the Nagoya Protocol Hub. And then on the 10th and 11th, we have community protocols and in English, Spanish, and French. So if you haven't registered and you're interested, you can also register on the website for these events. So the idea behind these small grants is that these small grants for these high return on investment areas can help promote the implementation and operationalization of the protocol. And while this is happening, we're also going to encourage that these projects that are implemented are documented, shared. We're going to organize in-person and online workshops to support this work, and it will feed back to improve the work, the actions that countries are taking through these projects. And the idea is that this leads to increased benefit sharing. So this is sort of the concept behind the projects, the small grants project. So how small is small? We were thinking that these projects would go from about $20,000 to $50,000. We're trying to encourage countries and projects to work together. So if you have more than one country that is working on a shared project, there can be 35,000 or 50,000 available for that, and for the larger regional or global projects, perhaps 50,000. So that's sort of the scale to think about for these small grants. We have some required criteria. So the required criteria are countries where the projects are being implemented are parties to the Nagoya Protocol. It's a developing country or an economy in transition. The other key required criteria is that countries have published their information on ABS measures and institutional arrangements on the clearinghouse. And if you have any trouble doing that, you can let us know. We can help you do that. But these are sort of the baseline things to start. Then we move to some more desirable criteria, and we'll try to give priority to the projects that foster cooperation and collaboration or joint work. So this is work internally, externally, internationally, nationally, but the idea is that the Nagoya Protocol is a very collaborative thing that needs to be implemented jointly. So I think we're focusing on supporting that type of work. We want very concrete outputs and lasting outcomes. So you can think about that as you think about your project. The idea is that these projects are going to lead to increasing efficiency, effectiveness, and sort of support a replicable approach. So these are sort of, in a way, pilot projects or projects that we're going to document into sort of cases that we're going to hopefully other people can learn from and take up and draw inspiration from. It's great if these projects can involve more than one country or organization. I sort of mentioned that. And I just also wanted to say that the Secretariat will also, in reviewing these concept notes that we get, we will help coordinate and provide suggestions on how to improve coordination of these projects. It's also great if the countries that are submitting these projects have prioritized ABS in their updated and revised NBSAPs. So that's an important criteria to consider. There's some expectations as well when you submit these projects that you should be aware about. The applicants are expected to have a good understanding of how ABS, how they're doing ABS in their country, how their system works, their national measures, their standard operating procedures. So they really need to have a strong understanding of how they're doing ABS. They need to commit some time and effort to the project, to carry it out, to participate in the workshops that are going to be organized over the intersessional period to share experiences and improve the projects, improve how they're being implemented, share and document the lessons and the things that you're doing. So that's an important aspect to this work, and these are sort of the expectations we have that you should be aware about. So basically, the steps to apply are think about the criteria, the required and desirable criteria, ensure that you understand the expectations and you have your information published on the clearinghouse, and then start to think about, we're going to talk a little bit about the ABS flow. We talked about that in the workshop. We talked about that in the workshop at COP16, and I'll discuss it in a minute, but think about how ABS works in your country, the typical sort of use case for ABS, and think about what you can improve that might have a big impact on how you do ABS. It's also, like we said, to take a look at the revised capacity building action plan. You can have some key ideas there about what kind of projects you might want to think about. So we have a project concept note that needs to be completed and sent to the Secretariat. You can find it on the website again. And this is a concept note. It's not a full project. Just I'll show you in a second how it's not a very elaborated project, but it's a start. And then it's important to have endorsement by the ABS National Focal Point, or this should be submitted by the focal point, or involve the key ABS people in your country. So that's a key part of this project, and then send it to the Secretariat before the deadline, which is the 30th of May. So just quickly, the concept note covers who's involved, but then it has a few small questions, not very elaborate, not very detailed questions, but more of a summary and our concept note of what you propose to do and how you are going to achieve these results. So take a look at the application form and think about how you might fill that out. So now I wanted to talk about information management specifically. Information management is basically a systematic and organized approach to how information, physical or digital information, is created, stored, retrieved, distributed, and used. And I think it's pretty well known. You may have heard information is powerful, knowledge is power, but well-managed information can really help you to be more efficient, more effective. It can help you make better informed decisions. It can help protect sensitive information and confidentiality, and it can help improve communication and collaboration. So there's lots of benefits from managing your information in an organized and systematic way for anything, and this is including how ABS is done. So I mentioned a little while ago about the ABS flow diagram. So this is what we used in the workshop, and we used it at different capacity building events we've done. But basically, this is the use case diagram representing the very most general, typical ABS case. So it translates Nagoya Protocol obligations into transactions, basically exchanges of information between users, the provider country, a user's country, and the ABS clearinghouse. So it's a diagram, and I'll take you through a summarized version of that diagram just as an idea to give you some an idea about how you can develop projects about information systems. So we start with some preconditions when you enter this use case diagram. And one of the preconditions is that users want to access and use resources. So genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge. So again, information systems are there to help us, and they're very good. Computers are very good. Databases and structured information is very good at helping us to increase effectiveness and efficiency. And everyone benefits when we can reduce transactions and increase efficient and effective interactions. So that's sort of the point of information systems. And one example is the ABS clearinghouse of an information system that helps reduce transaction costs. So the ABS clearinghouse provides information that's reliable and up to date, and it's in UN languages, and it's a one place where a user can go to find out information on how to access genetic resources or traditional knowledge in a country. So it's set up basically to reduce transaction costs, because without the ABS clearinghouse, and when we didn't have the ABS clearinghouse, users had to go to several different places. They had to go to different websites, and they had to maybe call some people. They had to go through a lot of different transactions to get information to find out about access. So this is one way, for example, how information systems encourage efficiency and effectiveness. But the other precondition there is that countries, and not just provider countries, I know it says provider countries on the slide, but countries have to provide certain information to the ABS clearinghouse in order for users to be able to use it in the way that it's meant, so they can get the information that they need. So that's another precondition to this use case of doing ABS. Another thing is that users have to be aware of their obligations and of the clearinghouse, and everybody has a role to play in awareness raising for the protocol. It's one of the articles of the protocol that requires everyone's involvement to raise awareness for ABS as a concept that we want to implement. So if we follow sort of the steps here, a user wants to use a resource, they go to the ABS clearinghouse, and a lot of times there's no information. So again, when they don't have information, they have to go back and forth between the country, because usually the only information on the ABS clearinghouse is the focal point or a contact like the focal point or CNA. And then they have to go back and forth to ask questions to figure out how they can get access to this resource and comply with their obligations. And when the information is not on the clearinghouse, this again increases transaction costs and can be discouraging for users that want to apply. So what we're trying to avoid in this diagram in these systems is a lot of back and forth arrows. What we want is clean, simple arrows, and that's one way to reduce transaction costs, and a well-managed, organized information can support that. So I hope I'm not going too fast, and and this is clear. It's very difficult to do this without seeing people's faces, but we went over this at the workshop, and we went over this at the COP workshop. So hopefully this is you've seen this perhaps before, but I'll move through the steps again. So the user wants to use a resource, they go to the clearinghouse, they find out information. Hopefully countries have provided the contact information they need and information on the rules and procedures for access. And then they can decide they want to apply, they know where to go, they have a contact point in the country where to send an application, they know what information they need to send with their application, they already have all the information they need to make a decision that they want to apply, that they, for example, it fits with their business model, that they know how long it's going to take, that there's no uncertainty or less uncertainty. And then they apply for access, they negotiate MAT, and all these transactions could be multiple, many different arrows back and forth. And the more arrows there are, the more costs you're going to generate that we don't want, inefficiency. So the idea is that countries have the information, they provided it to the clearinghouse, they provide it in a way that countries can consume it and understand it. Then the rules and the way to negotiate pick and mat is very clear. They are granted a permit, they get the permit is published by the provider country on the ABS clearinghouse, it becomes an international certificate of compliance, and they receive it, and then they can start utilization. So this is sort of the access phase to the process. So once they start research and development and commercialization, or whatever they've discussed that they're going to do with this resource, they have countries again have to gather information from checkpoints and provide that to the clearinghouse as a checkpoint communique, which informs the provider country what's happening in the user's country with their genetic resource, and then they can figure out what they need to do, or if they need to resolve something, or if they have doubts about how the user is complying with the mutually agreed terms or anything. So this is sort of the compliance phase of the typical ABS use case. So basically, these are all interactions and exchanges of information, right? So this is ABS information. So each of these transactions relies on information that needs to be somehow organized and managed, right? So each of these steps generates a piece of information or relies on a piece of information. So you have to think about, how do you manage this information? How is it created? How is it stored? How is it published? How is it retrieved? How is it used? So this is about how are you managing things like, for example, rejected applications. How many rejected applications do you get? Do you do anything with that information? Do you not do anything with that information? What is it stored somewhere? I mean, there's many pieces of information that can support ABS to happen. Also, when your information is well managed, it can provide a lot of insights that can be used to understand your system and understand how you can improve your system. So, for example, if I asked you, how many applicants did you have last month? Is it easy for you to understand or to provide an answer to that question? How many applicants do you expect next month? Is it easy to provide an answer to that question? Is it complicated? Is that information useful? Is it not? For example, where are the genetic resources being used right now? Where are your users, your international users? Are they internal in your country, or are they international in different countries? Which countries? Is it easy for you to figure that out? Do you have access to that information? Other things like, how did you determine your application fee? Do you have an application fee for your permits? Does it take a long time for permits? Is there a lot of work involved in granting a permit? These kind of questions can help you refine and improve how you are doing ABS efficiently. So that's the idea behind well-organized data, and thinking about what questions you want to ask about your system and what answers would help you improve. So some ideas for projects might be, you saw there was a couple of pictures of desks here. These are pictures from different countries from the ABS workshop in Bonn. And you notice that some people work on paper. So they have they have hard copies of permits, and that makes it very hard sometimes to, for example, publish them and store them and provide them to the clearinghouse. So you might want to think about the countries that have physical copies of permits and use, files and folders. You might want to think about a project to digitize them, digitize that into a database. And then for the countries that have databases, a project example could be setting up interoperability with your database and the ABS clearinghouse. One of the things that we can provide to support any work with the ABS clearinghouse and these projects is programming or time from our side to advise and support the development of projects that are going to use the clearinghouse's interoperability systems. So we can support that work and be available to support that work. A lot of countries have developed online permit application systems, and I think that's very useful as an entry point, and users know how to start the process. I think that could be very useful. A system to manage when you negotiate an ABS contract. A lot of times there's user reporting obligations, and they have to provide a report, for example, once a year. And it can be very useful to have a system to manage these reporting obligations, to know when users are late or when the next reporting they have to make, and follow up on that report to ensure that your genetic resources are being used in accordance to the mutually agreed terms that you've agreed. You can develop a system to support the information that is gathered from users at various stages of utilization. So this is the checkpoints, and make that available to the clearinghouse as the checkpoint communique. So that could be another project to think about. Another project might be about tracking benefits and reporting on benefits. How do you know how many benefits your country has received to date, or last year? How many benefits did you receive? Or by the reporting period that we have coming up for your national report, how many benefits have you received? And I think that's also very useful information that you might want to systematically organize and track. So again, just to sort of summarize a bit of the steps to apply for this, is that so ensure you meet the required criteria and consider this desirable criteria that I mentioned. So the required criteria again was party to the Nagoya Protocol, developing country, or a country with an economy in transition, and your information on ABS measures and institutional arrangements have been made available to the ABS Clearinghouse. So these are the key things. Desirable criteria, we talked about. We want to encourage cooperation and concrete outputs. This is a very practical projects. They're small grants. They're meant to just find like high return on investment areas of how you do ABS, where we can make progress that can really help you to improve your system. So it's not a lot of money, but it might be enough to help you do something a little bit better that will make life easier for you and how you do ABS in your country. So again, I think what you can do to start thinking about this is take a look at, again, as I mentioned, the revised capacity building action plan. Look at those outcome areas, look at those actions, think about which ones might resonate for you. Maybe even sketch out your own ABS flow, how it works in your country, and think about what kind of information management project could, or standard operating procedures could have a big impact on improving how you do ABS. So examine how you do it, and then think about those sort of barriers or blockages, or how information could be better managed to lead to more effective, efficient doing ABS. So once you have some ideas about what you might do, we have a project concept note, as I mentioned. It's on the website. It's not very complicated to fill out. Fill that out with the endorsement of the ABS National Focal Point, and submit that to the Secretariat before the end of May 30th, 2025. So I didn't want to go into too many details about what information management exactly. This is information management and standard operating procedures covers a lot. It's a very broad topic, and it's there to allow you to think about where best these grants can help you to do ABS better in your country. So that's all I wanted to present today. If you have any questions, if you're thinking about a project and you want to submit something and you have some doubts about what might be good, send us an email and we can help you we can work with you to present a good concept note. Following the deadline, we'll review the concept notes, we'll do a selection process, and we'll also work with those countries to, for example, provide them with information, provide them with different ways or some advice on how to improve their project concepts and develop them into more elaborated projects. So there's a bit of a sort of a process that we'll go through with the selected projects. So does anybody want to add anything? Beatrice, or is it? Otherwise, I think we can go into some of the questions. If there's any questions I haven't seen.
There's no questions in the chat.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions? Because we can answer a few questions now. I suppose you could turn on your microphone. Is that, or is it better to write it in the chat?
I also enabled microphone for the person who has their hand up, so you can go ahead if you wish to ask.
Let me just see the chat.
I believe, Kofi, you have your hand up. You may go ahead if you wish to do so.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew, for all this information. I am happy to follow it. As you know, my English is not good, but I will try. I arrived late, so I just want to know if we can have this all information after the presentation, after this webinar.
Yeah, sorry. I will make the presentation available and a recording of the webinar. That will be available on the website. Yeah.
Okay. Also,
yes.
For the presentation, I arrived late, I said previously. Can you try to explain me if it is regarding how to grant information and to put it in ABS Cloudhouse, or it regarding also how we can manage in our safe all our information regarding ABS.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank
for
you.
any questions about the ABS clearinghouse and the obligations to submit information, as I said, one of the required criteria for this was that your information, like ABS measures, and your information like competent national authorities, national focal point, all that information needs to be made available. And if you have any problems making that available, the available information that you have, you can contact us and we can help you do it. So we can do that online with you together, right? So that's the
Okay.
part of the requirements. If we're talking about, for example, a project that is about publishing permits and you have permits and you're struggling to publish all these permits online, I mean, we can, that doesn't need to be done before the project, if the project is about publishing permits, for example. But it's important that you have, I mean, this project is focusing on countries that have established an ABS national framework, legal framework. So they have done sort of, they've progressed in their implementation to that stage. And now we're thinking about how best to implement that legal framework and how to manage the information that gets generated through doing ABS in a way where it can be useful for you and useful for everybody. Does that make sense? So any other questions? Beatrice, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Matt, there is a question from China regarding the possibility of applying for the grant for organizations or others that are not parties. And maybe we want to clarify this for the information management systems, as is a particular case.
Yeah, I think the information management systems are focused a lot on the internal government, the competent national authority, the granting of permits, the managing of applications and information. I mean, it's a little focused on helping governments organize themselves for ABS. But that said, I think projects that are with support of the national focal point can be partner with whatever organizations, right, that want to support that work or are working on that. But really, I think this topic is generally focused on improving the governments being able to manage this information better, right, and make value from that. Do you want to add something, Via, or?
No, I think it's clear, but basically that's the idea. An organization could maybe be the lead on a project with different countries to improve their information exchange systems, but still the focus would be at a national level.
Yeah.
And the same for IPLCs. I mean, there could be maybe a project that is more based on information systems regarding traditional knowledge, but still should be something that, I mean, with involvement of IPLCs, but should be at national level. So the lead could be different organizations, but the effort is for, processing ABS information as Matt described. There is another question in the chat as well, and we have two hands. Okay.
So the question in the chat, can government officials use this grant funding to hire additional team members to increase their capacity for processing permits? Well, potentially they could, but the idea behind these projects is, as I mentioned, concrete and lasting outcomes. So hiring a team member is a little bit perhaps temporary because this is not a lot of funding. You might want to hire a team, do something that could be more lasting. For example, process a systematic way, develop a systematic way to process those permits, right? So that's the idea, right? And if you have some issues, like you have a problem and you want to try to figure out how to turn this problem into a project to resolve that, you can also try to describe that in your concept note as best as you can, and we'll work with countries after they submit it to perhaps provide some advice or improvements on how this could be a more concrete, long-lasting project, right? So let's move to Yadav. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Matthew. We met in person in Egypt, so very nice to see you. My question is, I think, first question is how many funds you are distributing this time? I mean, the number of the grants. And second question, I think in my understanding, the International Certificate of Compliance is just the notification of MAD or ABS agreement in ABS clearinghouse, right?
Yeah. Okay, so your first question, we don't have a lot of money to do this, but we have enough money for a few to distribute a few grants, right? And if there's going to be regional projects of 50,000, then we'll have less projects, right? But the idea is that you can think about these projects and perhaps they're already included in your national NBSAPs or project planning. And we can also, the ones that don't get funded, we can use that to also continue this project or continue the matchmaking element of it that we have at the Secretariat to fund some of those other projects. But for this biennium, we have a limited amount of money that will allow us, not very many projects, but a few. Your question about the certificate of compliance is a representation of your national permit. So it's evidence that a user has complied with your obligations, your process to, they've been granted PIC, and they've negotiated a mutually agreed terms, and the certificate is evidence of that at an international level. For example, if your national language is not, I mean, Portuguese, for example, and it could be difficult for the compliance checkpoints to understand if you've gotten a national permit because they don't understand the language. The certificate is a international representation that you have complied in one of the 6 UN languages with the provider country's legislation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah. Suhel, you have a question?
Yes, and of course we don't want to apply for a grant here, but it's a little bit from experience, and I don't know whether you mentioned it already, as I got in a little bit late, but when supporting countries in precisely developing online systems, internal processes, and so on, the crux of the matter quite often is lacking hardware or insufficient hardware. So and storage also of data. Would the grants also allow then making provision for buying hardware like servers and so on, or would that be difficult in this regard? Because quite often this can be the bottleneck.
Yeah, no, I think that could be possible, very possible. I think that these small grants can be co-financing for larger projects. So if you have, I mean, you don't buy server space for nothing, you know, you buy it because you have a project to set up a website or whatever, a database. So you have maybe a larger project that you want, and these funds can be used as co-financing for, you know, if you have a well thought out plan, I think.
Thanks.
There is one more question on the chat. Is there are there any terms and conditions associated with the funding support?
Well, I think after this initial, you submit you are eligible, basically. As I said, you meet some of the criteria, and there's that, I mentioned the expectations, right? So country or the applicants and those involved in these projects have to be involved in ABS in their country, knowledgeable. They have to put the time and effort to try to make these a success, and also to document their experience. The idea is that these are projects that can help others as well. So documenting this experience and sharing the experience, whether it's successful or not, but we're trying to improve over time. So that's part of this project, is to share your experience with others. So do you think, did I answer that question?
Maybe I can add, yeah, basically, as we will prepare the project together, we will establish some terms and conditions. Like, for example, you will need to submit a financial report, a final document.
Yeah.
So there will be some milestones, and we will do this together as part of the second phase.
Yeah.
And I sent also some of the information that we have on the website of the expectations in an answer to the question. So it's everything there as well.
Yeah. The successful sort of applications for projects will start basically a process. And along that process, as Beatrice said, we'll have opportunities at workshops, at different events to share experience, to have updates on the process, to have inputs from others on the process, discuss some of the projects together. So it will be a bit of a process up until COP17 about how that will work together to implement these.
There is also a question maybe about a project idea about the creation of a genetic resource database.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to the idea that this is to implement the Nagoya Protocol, right? These are small grants, first of all, to support, for example, countries that have, like was mentioned, this blockage in publishing permits, and they have a problem. There's a capacity issue. So how can we address that capacity issue more sustainably, right? I mean, a project could perhaps be the creation of a genetic resource database, but it has to be applicable to implementing your national framework for the Nagoya Protocol. Anything you want to say about that, Bia?
No, I think that was clear. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe let me add there. I think the idea is Matt spoke about co-financing. There may be another partner there who can come and contribute to what you have, and with that you enlarge the pie. So the idea is to pluck those low-hanging fruits with these small grants, so that they can enable you to do larger things and build upon. And as Beatrice said, I think it was Matt who said, as you come up with the proposals that you have, we'll have them here, those that we will not be able to fund. And as we see other potential donors coming forward, we may then link you up with them. But it is for you to see what can you do that allows you to do much more later, and at the same time implement your applications. Thank you.
So,
I think there was,
what's that? Any other?
there was one more comment. It was not a question, but I just wanted to read it out in case you wanted to address it. It's my worry is time to get clearance from organization to acquire confidential information to publish on ABS.
To acquire confidence. I'm not sure I quite understand what you mean there and who this person is and where they're coming from. But I mean, part of the, I mean, I've heard of countries having sort of slowing down, sort of a barrier to publish information on the clearinghouse is that confidential information from the permits need to be removed, basically, from the information you publish as a certificate, right? And someone has to be responsible for understanding that. So, I mean, if you're having this issue with you don't know what fields are, or you don't have a way, it is an information management problem, right? You don't know which information can be made available for some reason, and you're having trouble putting that information into the certificate format to be published. So you might want to set up a system, a process, some sort of operating procedure or whatever to ensure that the information that you publish as a certificate does not include confidential information, and do that in an efficient way where that will speed up this. I'm not sure what your question was, but maybe this delay that is happening. So I tried my best to address that. So we're almost we're almost at our time limit. I think it's 10 o'clock. Any last questions? If not, and you do have questions, take a look at the form. Try to submit try to put your thoughts together in a rough draft. You can always share it with us. We'll help you with this process. We'll be going through, again, this process with you to improve and provide advice and match countries together that may have submitted similar projects. We'll try to support you along this. So if you have any questions, send it to the ABS CH email at cbd.in. and we'll get back to you. Sound good? So just to mention as well, we have webinars tomorrow about communicating user-friendly procedures. So that's at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We'll be doing that in partnership with the Nagoya Protocol Hub, and we'll talk about the easy guides that they developed and how you can get involved in that project. And then on the 10th and the 11th, we'll be talking about developing and implementing community protocols. And that will be, those will be in French and Spanish as well as English. So try to sign up for those ones if you're available. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at absclearinghouse@cbd.int. Great. So thank you very much. And I look forward to receiving these concept notes. So have a good rest of your day, everybody.